Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a story that drifts more like a dream than a history lesson. Picture a castle under the glow of moonlight, those tall stone walls looking less like defenses and more like the sides of a giant jewelry box, holding secrets that the night air can barely keep from spilling. Inside, there's a princess who can't quite fall asleep. You know how sometimes you just lie there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day, or thinking about what you should have said in that awkward conversation 3 months ago? Yeah, royalty isn't immune to that either. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is where you are. Always fun to imagine these stories being heard in every corner of the world at every strange hour of the night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.
The chamber is vast, but not cold. Curtains of velvet hang heavy against the stone. A fireplace gives off a sleepy ember glow, and high above, a painted ceiling shows constellations that no one has bothered to dust for decades. You lie there with the princess, so to speak, not in a scandalous way, don't get any ideas, but in the sense that you can almost feel her restlessness, the way she fidgets with the embroidered hem of her sheets, the way her sighs seem too heavy for such a delicate figure. The princess has a habit. Before sleep, she tells her secrets to the night. It's not really prayer, not exactly journaling, more like whispering into a cosmic voicemail inbox. She speaks softly, half-formed thoughts about what she longs for, what confuses her, what she can't quite say aloud to her advisors who are way too invested in tax policy. Seriously, if you've ever had dinner with someone who only wants to talk about tariffs, you know the vibe. And then, as her eyelids finally start to droop, something happens. A flutter. You might think it's just a moth attracted to the candlelight, but no, these wings are too colorful, too deliberate. A butterfly in the dead of night. First one, then another, then a dozen, slipping through the balcony doors that no servant thought to latch. They don't land on the princess, though. They hover above her, dipping in rhythm to the rise and fall of her breath. If you were to squint, you might swear they were listening. And when her dreams begin, faint and fragile, the butterflies tilt as if catching invisible threads. There's a historical tidbit for you. In several cultures, butterflies were believed to embody the soul or carry fragments of dreams. In ancient Greek, the word psyche actually meant both soul and butterfly. Imagine being a scholar back then, writing about the human mind while drawing doodles of butterflies in the margins. Folklorists argue whether this was just poetic symbolism, or if people truly believed tiny winged creatures could ferry your subconscious around like Uber drivers of the night. Here, though, in this castle, it isn't a metaphor. You see it clearly. As the princess sinks deeper into sleep, her dream images, half-remembered lullabies, blurred faces from festivals past, the smell of bread from the castle kitchens seem to lift out of her mind like glowing wisps, and the butterflies take them. One by one, they gather each fragment, carrying them out the window into the moon-soaked air. It's beautiful, but also slightly absurd, like watching a group project where nobody decided who was supposed to bring the PowerPoint. They bump into each other, wings brushing. Some nearly drop a dream fragment before recovering. Still, they manage, because somehow even chaos in dreams looks graceful. There's a quiet debate among later storytellers about what's really happening here. Some say the butterflies are merely reflections of the princess's imagination, that no one else sees them. Others swear villagers outside the castle witnessed strange swarms glowing like lanterns at midnight, drifting toward the hills. Scholars have argued whether these visions were folklore exaggerations, collective hallucinations, or maybe just early sightings of particularly ambitious fireflies. But tonight you're not debating, you're watching. The princess finally exhales a long sigh, the kind that sounds like a knot loosening and drifts into stillness. And overhead, the ceiling mural of constellations almost looks alive, like the stars painted there are jealous of the butterflies moving so freely. There's something oddly relatable here. The idea that even your most private thoughts, the ones that swirl right before sleep, might not stay locked inside your head. They might find wings. And if you've ever woken up and thought, why did I dream about my third grade math teacher tap dancing with a penguin? Well, maybe that's just the butterfly delivery service messing up the address. It happens. For now, you lie in that silver-lit room, watching the impossible happen as though it's the most natural thing in the world. And the night outside grows quieter still, like even the crickets want front-row seats to the princess's drifting thoughts.
The princess sleeps deeply now, and you drift closer to the edge of her dreamscape, like a quiet observer sneaking past velvet curtains. The air feels lighter, though the night remains hushed. That's when the first fluttering messengers arrive in earnest, not just a few strays, but a whole procession of butterflies, as though someone rang the midnight dinner bell. They come in colors too rich for daylight, sapphire blues that glow like river stones underwater, soft oranges edged with silver, wings painted with spots that look suspiciously like tiny eyes. You can't help but feel as though they're watching you back. One settles near the princess's pillow, wings folding and opening in steady rhythm, like a tiny paper fan trying to keep time with her breathing. It's carrying something invisible, but you sense it. An image, a flicker, a small glowing ember of thought. As you lean in, it suddenly bursts outward, and for a moment you see it too. A fleeting vision of the princess's childhood garden, where she once chased ducks while the court musicians pretended not to laugh. Then, just as quickly, the butterfly flutters away, carrying that memory into the night like a secret letter. It's oddly comforting, isn't it? Knowing that some part of her, those little joys and embarrassments, doesn't just vanish, but finds a new place to live. Like when you upload old photos to the cloud, only this cloud is alive and has wings. Though let's be honest, this butterfly storage plan probably comes with less spam email. Historically, many cultures held similar beliefs about butterflies as messengers. In parts of Japan, it was said that when a butterfly entered your house, it meant someone you loved was about to visit. In Ireland, folklore suggested butterflies carried the souls of the departed, making it taboo to harm them. Of course, scholars can't agree if these myths grew from actual sightings or if butterflies just seemed too delicate to be ordinary insects. Either way, across the globe, people noticed their uncanny ability to arrive when hearts were most vulnerable. Here in the castle, it isn't metaphor or omen. The butterflies are practical workers, like tiny librarians cataloging her subconscious. They dip and weave, snatching threads of imagery, a ribbon from a festival dance, the scent of cinnamon from spiced wine, the echo of footsteps in a grand hall. Each fragment glows faintly until it rests on their wings, after which the light dims, absorbed into their patterns. You catch yourself smiling because the whole thing is so wonderfully absurd. Imagine telling your therapist, "Sorry, I didn't bring my dream journal this week. The butterflies stole it." On the upside, it would probably save on copay. The princess shifts slightly, murmuring something indistinct. Her lips curl into the faintest smile, which you realize you've never seen her wear when awake. Maybe that's the truest magic, how sleep allows her to be lighter, freer, when courtly duty makes her so careful by day. There's one butterfly that catches your attention more than the rest. Its wings are patterned not in bright colors, but in deep, velvety black with streaks of soft gold. It doesn't hurry like the others. It lingers, hovering just above the princess's forehead as though waiting for a particularly delicate dream to surface. When it finally settles, the air seems to still. What it carries is harder to glimpse, something more personal, maybe even a longing she hasn't admitted aloud. This part is debated in later retellings. Some folklorists suggest the dark butterfly represents a subconscious desire, while others think it's symbolic of burdens too heavy to share. And of course, there are those skeptics who roll their eyes entirely, chalking it up to poetic invention. Yet none of them can quite explain why entire villages in this tale would soon claim to dream the same dreams as the princess. For now, you stay quiet, because the room itself feels sacred, like you're intruding on a secret ritual. The butterflies complete their work, collecting memories, half-thoughts, fears, and joys, and then, almost as if signaled by a conductor, they rise in a single wave and drift toward the balcony doors. Their wings leave faint trails of shimmering dust in the moonlight, like a chalk drawing on the night sky. The princess sighs again, this time a softer sound, as though her dreams have been gently lifted out, leaving her lighter. You imagine what it would feel like if your own tangled thoughts had somewhere to go, instead of bouncing endlessly inside your head. Maybe that's the appeal here, the idea that dreams don't just vanish, but find caretakers who know what to do with them. As you watch the last butterfly slip into the night, you can't help but think, this castle is more alive in sleep than it is in daylight.
The balcony doors are wide open now, and you drift after the butterflies as they slip beyond the princess's chamber. Their wings beat silently, like pages of a book turning in slow motion, carrying pieces of her subconscious into the night. You lean against the carved stone ledge, peering down into the royal gardens below. And that's where the whispers begin. The gardens are beautiful by day. Trimmed hedges, carefully pruned roses, fountains that spout water like they're competing in some aristocratic talent show. But at night, they feel transformed. The moon pours down silver light, making the statues glow faintly, as if they're about to step off their pedestals and join you for a midnight stroll. The butterflies scatter among them, gently releasing fragments of dreams that drift down like sparks from an invisible fire. One fragment settles onto a rose. The flower stirs, not dramatically, not in a singing Disney chorus kind of way, but in the faintest ripple of petals. A fragrance stronger than before rises from it, carrying the memory of the princess's childhood laughter. Another dream fragment slips into the fountain. Suddenly, the water changes tone, its splashing sounding like a half-forgotten lullaby. You recognize it, well, maybe you don't, but your bones do. The sort of tune that feels like someone rocking you even though you're sitting perfectly still. It's uncanny, but oddly soothing. The princess's dreams are soaking into the world around her, weaving with the garden itself. Butterflies drift from flower to flower, each one leaving behind small doses of her imagination, like bartenders pouring tiny glasses of nostalgia. Of course, gardens have long been considered magical places in folklore. Historians love pointing out how the enchanted garden trope shows up everywhere, from Persian tales of paradise to European medieval poetry, where a garden symbolized safety, mystery, and temptation all at once. Scholars still bicker about whether these gardens were symbolic dreamscapes or just writers showing off their horticultural vocabulary. But here, you don't need an interpretation. You can see it with your own eyes. Dreams spilling across roses and fountains, making the night bloom with echoes of memory. A breeze drifts through, carrying the whispers of the garden.
They don't sound like words at first, more like the rustle of leaves or the clinking of water droplets. But if you tilt your head just right, you begin to catch hints of meaning. You hear soft voices repeating phrases the princess mumbled in her sleep. "Don't go too far. Bring the lantern back. Stay with me." They float among the hedges, carried from leaf to leaf, as though the plants themselves are gossiping in gentle tones. It's both magical and a little ridiculous, honestly. Imagine waking up and discovering your rose bushes are basically quoting your sleep talk from last night. No one needs that reminder. Yes, we all heard you dream about cheese again. Thank you. But in this place, it feels right, like the world is kinder when it shares your secrets instead of hoarding them. There's one statue in the center of the garden, a marble figure of a woman with outstretched hands. Normally, she's just a decoration, another symbol no one remembers the meaning of. But tonight, when a butterfly rests briefly on her hand, the statue seems to hum, a vibration you feel more than you hear, like standing too close to a cello being played softly. Some versions of the tale insist the statue whispered an actual word that night. Others claim she merely turned her head ever so slightly toward the balcony. Scholars, naturally, argue about whether this is allegory or genuine supernatural occurrence. You, however, are standing right here. You know something happened. The princess shifts again in her sleep above, sighing deeply. And as she does, the garden sighs back. Roses rustle, fountains sparkle, whispers grow louder for just a moment. It's like a call and response between dreamer and world. You realize something important. These butterflies aren't just couriers, they're translators. They take the secret language of sleep and deliver it to the earth in ways it can understand. Fragrance for flowers, song for fountains, whispers for leaves. Without them, dreams would stay locked away, unheard. The air is so peaceful that you almost forget the absurdity of it all. A moment ago you were skeptical. Now you're leaning on a balcony, nodding like it's perfectly normal for a hedge to hum lullabies at midnight. That's the sneaky power of the scene. It convinces you the impossible is simply how things work here. One butterfly circles back toward you. Its wings flicker with a faint glow, and for a heartbeat you catch a dream fragment yourself. Not the princess's memory of childhood or longing, but something stranger. A glimpse of standing in this very garden centuries later, retelling this same story. It's like déjà vu, but wrapped in wings. The butterfly drifts on, leaving you with the faint sense that you've been gently pranked by destiny. The whispers from the garden don't just stay among the roses and fountains. They float beyond the castle walls, slipping through the winding cobblestone streets of the village below. It's the kind of night where even the taverns have gone quiet, mugs left half-emptied, candles guttering down to their last inch. Most windows are dark. Yet somewhere between one breath and the next, you notice shutters creaking open. Villagers stir in their sleep, shifting, murmuring, as though they've been nudged by the faint brush of butterfly wings against their dreams. And then it happens. The dreams spill over. A baker jolts awake, heart pounding, because he just dreamt of kneading dough that turned into glowing stars. A shepherd boy stirs under his wool blanket, whispering about a meadow where his shepherd had golden bells instead of wool. Even the innkeeper, normally too practical to indulge in anything that isn't coin or ale, mumbles in his sleep about lanterns that floated like bubbles through the sky. They don't know it yet, but they are all dreaming the princess's dreams. It's a peculiar phenomenon, isn't it? You've probably had that experience where someone swears they dreamt about you, and you're left wondering whether you should be flattered or concerned. Imagine that, but on the scale of an entire village. Folklorists still debate whether these shared dreams were the invention of later storytellers trying to add a sense of community magic, or if they reflect something deeper, the ancient belief that dreams could bind people together like threads of invisible fabric. Some anthropologists even point to rituals in which tribes told their dreams at sunrise, weaving them into collective stories. The village here? It doesn't need a ritual. The dreams arrive uninvited, carried on fragile wings, stitched into the minds of farmers, cobblers, and milkmaids alike. And of course, the results are delightfully chaotic. A blacksmith wakes in the middle of the night sweating because he dreamed of forging a sword made of sugar. His wife, equally bewildered, tells him she dreamed of the same sword, but hers melted in the rain. By morning, the poor man is convinced the universe is mocking his profession. It would be easy to dismiss it all as coincidence. Villagers, after all, are prone to exaggeration. But then they begin to compare notes. Someone describes a dream about walking through a hallway of floating mirrors. Another interrupts, "Wait, I was there too, but you were holding a candle." Soon enough, the entire marketplace hums with the same conclusion. They've all been visited by the princess's imagination. The rumor spreads faster than spilled wine in a cellar. By noon the next day, farmers arriving from distant fields are already asking, "So what did she dream last night?" As if it's become a daily bulletin: weather forecast, market prices, royal dream report. You can picture a sleepy crier someday announcing, "Hear ye, hear ye! Princess says, no more geese in the throne room!" Of course, this is where scholars roll their eyes. Some argue that the whole story reeks of later embellishment, that no village could ever experience shared visions so vividly. Others point out that mass dream phenomena, sometimes called dream contagion, have actually been documented in small communities, usually tied to heightened stress or superstition. Still, they can't quite explain the detail, the way so many villagers insisted the same images recurred across their slumber. But here, standing among them in the candlelit hush of early dawn, you can see it for yourself. Their eyes shine with the thrill of having brushed against something wondrous. For people who spend their days mending boots or hauling hay, a night full of lantern-lit skies and enchanted rivers is better than any royal decree. The butterflies themselves, they're long gone, flitting back towards the castle or disappearing into the forest. They don't stay to answer questions, which feels on brand for butterflies, just dropping magic and ghosting without explanation. Still, their absence leaves behind a charged stillness, like the pause after music ends, before applause begins. The princess, meanwhile, remains unaware. She sleeps peacefully in her moonlit chamber, unaware that the entire village has been recruited into her subconscious theater. Somewhere in her dream, she is laughing. And down in the village, a child stirs in his crib and laughs too. And you realize with a shiver, the line between her world and theirs is already dissolving.
By the next evening, when the candles are being lit in the great hall and servants hurry about with trays of roasted meats, the only person in the castle not joining the bustle is the jester. He's sitting on a low stool near the kitchens, chewing on what looks suspiciously like yesterday's bread crust, watching the flames in the hearth as though they're telling him jokes only he can hear. Now, every kingdom's jester is supposed to be a fool, right? A man with bells on his cap, tumbling about, making balloon animal-level distractions for a moody court. But if you've ever actually paid attention to how folklore paints jesters, you'll notice a pattern. They're rarely just silly. They're often the cleverest person in the room, the one who can say dangerous truths because he hides them inside a joke. It's like how comedians today can get away with saying what politicians can't, except with more tights and juggling pins. This particular jester has been listening. He's heard the servants gossiping in the scullery, swearing that their own dreams had been filled with glowing fountains and impossible music. He's watched the way the villagers whisper at market stalls about what the princes dreamed for them the night before. And he has his own theory. He suspects it's the butterflies. Now, if you were in his shoes, or his oversized, pointy slippers, you'd probably keep that theory quiet.
Butterflies carrying dreams? It sounds like the kind of thing that gets you locked in the tower for excessive whimsy. But the jester knows better. He's seen them himself. One night when the court had long gone to bed, he lingered in the shadows of the hallway and spotted them, slipping past torches without their wings ever catching flame. He even swears one landed on his nose, though he admits, with a grin, that it could have just been a drunk moth. And so, while others marvel, he begins to piece together a pattern. He notices how the princess's mood in the day seems to influence what villagers dream by night. When she is lonely, the whole town wakes with visions of empty roads. When she is joyful, they wake laughing, insisting they saw balloons made of sunlight. The jester scratches notes on the back of playing cards, diagramming the strange exchange like an astrologer mapping constellations. There's a historical twist here. In medieval courts, jesters sometimes doubled as record keepers or unofficial advisors. Their jokes carried truths kings dared not hear from anyone else. Scholars still debate whether stories like this exaggerate their role or whether the jester really was the wisest one in the room. Some even suggest the fool's cap with its 3 points wasn't just silly fashion, but a symbol of seeing in 3 directions: past, present, and future, which, if you squint, sounds suspiciously close to the role our butterfly-watching friend is playing now. Of course, he's still a jester, so his notes are half nonsense. On one card he writes, "Dreams equals butterflies equals bread pudding." On another, "If goose dreams of princess, who is ruling whom?" You'd roll your eyes if you saw it, but buried in his doodles are insights sharper than any scholar's quill. He decides to test his theory. The next morning, in the middle of court, while nobles are droning on about crop counts, he sidles up to the princess and whispers, "Majesty, if tonight you dream of carrots, tomorrow we'll all be rabbits." She laughs politely, assuming it's just another jest. But the next dawn, half the village wakes up with memories of twitching noses and chewing endless orange roots. Coincidence? The jester doesn't think so. That's when he grows quiet. He realizes he stumbled onto something bigger than comedy. If dreams can spill into the minds of others, then the princess holds a kind of power no one is prepared to handle. It's not swords, not armies, but the subtle ability to shape hearts and thoughts in sleep. A gift or a danger, depending on how you look at it. The jester leans back in his chair, bells jingling softly, and mutters to himself, "So the butterflies are the real couriers here, and I'm the only fool watching the mail." Then he chuckles, because, in the end, isn't that always the way?
The jester may be the only one bold enough to say it aloud, but soon enough, whispers of older lore drift back into the castle halls. You overhear them as you wander through the echoing corridors, snippets from chambermaids polishing silver, from guards leaning on their spears, even from the cook stirring stew like she's hiding a secret ingredient. They all claim they've heard of this before. Not this princess exactly, but the butterflies. You pause near a hearth where 2 servants speak in hushed voices. One insists his grandmother told him that in the far mountains, butterflies were believed to ferry the souls of the sleeping to safe pastures. The other shakes her head, swearing she once heard that butterflies didn't just carry dreams, they ate them, feasting on our worries so we'd wake lighter. You can't help but smirk. If that's true, then somewhere out there is a very stressed butterfly complaining about its workload. Folklore has a way of creeping back when it's most needed. And here, as the entire kingdom is unsettled by shared dreams, people begin digging into every scrap of story they can recall. Old scrolls are pulled from dusty shelves. Verses once dismissed as nonsense suddenly sound prophetic. In truth, butterflies as dream creatures show up across cultures.
Ancient Aztec myths speak of goddesses who took butterfly form to carry messages between worlds. In Slavic folk tales, it was whispered that the first soul to leave the body at night would appear as a moth or butterfly, fragile but free. Historians debate endlessly about whether these beliefs spread through trade routes or if humans everywhere simply saw butterflies and thought, "Ah, yes, that looks like a dream with wings." And yet, there's always uncertainty. Some folklorists argue the tales were symbolic, poets waxing lyrical about change and fragility. Others wonder if people genuinely believed the flutter of wings outside a window meant your very thoughts were being harvested. No one agrees, which, of course, means the debate continues at dinner tables long after the stew has gone cold. Here, in the castle, though, you don't need theory. You see it firsthand. Every night the princess dreams, and every night the butterflies arrive. Their wings glow faintly, their movements purposeful. They aren't just pretty accidents of nature. They're participants in something older, something humans have always half suspected but never proved. The princess herself begins to hear the stories, carried to her by the jester, the servants, the townsfolk. She listens with wide eyes, the kind of expression you'd have if someone told you your sleep-talking was part of an ancient prophecy. Part of her is flattered, part of her is unnerved. After all, being the subject of bedtime folklore while you're still alive is a bit like being told you're already a legend. No pressure, right? The jester, of course, milks it for comedy. "Your Majesty," he says one morning, bowing so low his bells nearly clink against the tiles, "shall I introduce you henceforth as Her Dreamful Highness, Keeper of Butterflies, Patron of Midnight Gossip?" She rolls her eyes, but hides a smile. Still, the tales stick, and you can sense the castle shifting under their weight. Guards at their posts now glance nervously when a butterfly flits by, as though it might be spying. Servants leave crumbs of honey near the windows, just in case the dream messengers get hungry. Even the steward, a man normally obsessed with inventory, mutters about needing to budget for butterfly nuts. It's equal parts absurd and profound, which, let's be honest, is exactly how folklore works. Half practical joke, half sacred truth. And you're caught in the middle, marveling at how old tales, once buried in dusty corners, are suddenly alive, fluttering through hallways that have never felt so awake. The princess? She leans out her balcony each night now, waiting. And sure enough, the butterflies never fail her. By now, the castle corridors are buzzing with more than just gossip. The rumors have reached the scribes, the men and women who usually spend their nights bent over parchment, carefully illuminating royal decrees with gold leaf, while muttering about how much cheaper ink would have been. Tonight, though, their candles burn brighter, their quills scratching not about taxes or land disputes, but about butterflies. You wander past the scriptorium and hear them at it, a full-blown debate, the kind that only happens when people are sleep-deprived and secretly enjoying themselves. One scribe insists that butterflies are symbols, nothing more. Painted metaphors, he calls them. He waves his quill dramatically, nearly splattering ink across someone's robe. The princess dreams vividly, yes, but these tales of butterflies? They're just our imaginations taking flight. Another scribe, hair wild from pulling at it too much, shakes his head furiously. "No, no! You forget the villagers. They dream the same dreams. Coincidence? Impossible! Butterflies are carriers, couriers, messengers between sleeping minds." His voice cracks, partly from passion, partly from forgetting to drink water for 6 hours. And then there's the third scribe, calmly stirring a cup of wine like he's mixing a potion. "Perhaps," he says, "the butterflies are not real at all. Perhaps they exist only inside the dream, and what we see is our minds trying to interpret something it cannot grasp." His colleagues groan, accusing him of being too philosophical. He shrugs, sipping his wine, perfectly content with being insufferable. It's hilarious watching them argue like schoolchildren over who gets to sit at the front of the class. Yet beneath their squabbling lies something bigger. You can feel it. This isn't just about insects. It's about what dreams mean. Do they belong only to the sleeper, or do they spill into the world, shaping everyone around them? Historically, debates like this aren't new. In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams were recorded on clay tablets as messages from the gods. The Greeks built temples called Asclepions, where the sick slept in hopes of healing visions. But even back then, scholars couldn't agree. Were dreams divine, or just the brain sneezing out images? That same argument continues here in the flicker of candlelight, quills tapping against wooden desks like impatient fingers. The princess herself wanders into the room at one point, curious. She listens to their arguments with a small smile tugging at her lips. "So tell me," she asks softly, "are my dreams real or not?" The scribes freeze, quills hovering in midair. None dare answer outright because, really, how you tell your ruler she might be hallucinating? Finally, the wine-drinking scribe clears his throat. "Majesty, your dreams are real enough to us," which, let's be honest, is the most diplomatic dodge in history. Outside, meanwhile, the butterflies continue their nightly rounds, blissfully unaware that they've become the subject of academic infighting. They drift into gardens, into streets, into cottages where children giggle in their sleep. While the scholars argue, the butterflies just do. It's a reminder that the world rarely waits for us to agree on definitions before carrying on with its mysteries. You lean against the doorway, listening to the scribes mutter about empirical evidence and metaphorical resonance, and you can't help but chuckle. Here they are, furiously debating the mechanics of dream butterflies, while one is literally perched on the edge of an ink bottle beside them, wings glinting faintly in the candlelight. None of them notice. That's academia for you. When the scholars finally argue themselves into exhaustion, half of them slumped on their desks like overcooked noodles, you slip away, following the sound of fluttering wings. The castle feels strangely hollow tonight, its long corridors echoing as though the stones themselves are whispering. And then you see them, butterflies. Dozens of them, hovering in the torchlight like sparks shaken loose from the flame. They don't linger inside. Instead, they drift toward an open window, wings catching the moonlight in shimmering fragments of blue, gold, and pale silver. And you, naturally, decide to follow. Because really, what else are you going to do? Stay in bed counting ceiling cracks? This is clearly the more interesting option. Outside, the night air is cool against your face, tinged with the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the gardens below. The butterflies don't rush. They float lazily, as if enjoying your company. Every so often one pauses on a branch or stone, waiting for you to catch up, like an overly patient tour guide who's long since charged by the hour. They lead you beyond the manicured rose beds and fountains, past the carved statues with missing noses. Seriously, why do statues always lose their noses first? And toward the edge of the forest. There, the landscape shifts. The air grows thicker, damp with moss and the faint earthy perfume of pine. A path winds forward, half hidden by ferns. The butterflies slip into it without hesitation, their wings glowing faintly as if infused with starlight. And you, naturally, decide to follow. Because really, what else are you going to do? Stay in bed counting ceiling cracks? This is clearly the more interesting option. The world here is hushed, but not silent. Crickets hum like a low chorus. An owl calls once, soft and far away. The ground is springy beneath your feet, the kind of mossy carpet that feels both luxurious and vaguely suspicious, like nature's version of memory foam. The butterflies float ahead in little clusters, weaving in and out of the branches. For a moment, you swear they arrange themselves into shapes: a crown, a heart, something almost like a map. But before you can make sense of it, they scatter again, as if to say, "Not yet, patience." Historically, butterflies have been loaded with meaning. In Greek thought, the word psyche meant both soul and butterfly. Some even believed the butterfly was the soul leaving the body during sleep, fluttering about before returning by morning. Scholars still debate whether those beliefs stemmed from genuine observation or just poetic imagination. Either way, here in this forest it feels eerily plausible. A quirky tidbit: in parts of Eastern Europe, it was once said that butterflies carried the dreams of children, specifically, fluttering around their cribs at night, ensuring the little ones were visited only by gentle visions. Watching these butterflies guide you deeper into the woods, you wonder if that's exactly what they're doing now, only scaled up, moving entire villages with the princess's subconscious. The deeper you go, the more the air hums with possibility. The butterflies begin to gather in greater numbers, forming a loose spiral above a cluster of stones. You pause, tilting your head. Are they circling an entrance? A landmark? Or just goofing off in synchronized flight practice? Scholars could argue endlessly, but here you feel it in your bones. They're pointing toward something. And you, of course, can't resist. The spiral of butterflies pulls you onward until the trees finally open into a clearing. It's the kind of place that makes you pause automatically, even if you're the sort of person who usually forgets to pause. Moonlight spills down like a silver veil, bathing the clearing in soft light. The grass shimmers faintly, as though it has been brushed with dew made from stars rather than water. And there they are, the butterflies, gathered in a vast swirling dance. Not random flutters now, purposeful. They rise and fall, weaving around each other, until, slowly, an image begins to take shape. You squint, which is ridiculous because who actually squints in a dreamlike forest? But still, you squint, and what you see is a map, not a flat drawing, but a glowing lattice in the air, shifting and shimmering like constellations rearranging themselves just for you. The butterflies sketch out a winding river, a crown-shaped hill, and tiny dots that resemble houses. Then, just as quickly, the pattern dissolves. It reforms, showing what looks like the princess's chamber, complete with the tall window you just climbed out of. The whole thing is like watching a celestial screensaver programmed by some highly caffeinated cartographer. You're struck by the realization that this isn't random artistry. The butterflies are communicating, drawing out connections between dreams, people, and places. Historians might say this echoes the medieval belief that dreams contained coded maps of the future. Some ancient texts insisted you could navigate life by following the landscapes that appeared in sleep. Of course, scholars still debate whether that was wisdom or wishful thinking. You'd guess both. There's also a quirky folktale from rural Japan about butterflies leading lost travelers home at night. Villagers claimed the wings caught enough moonlight to act like tiny lanterns. Following them here, you can see how that belief would stick. Their glow isn't just pretty, it's directional. The map pulses once more before fading into scattered wings. You tilt your head, and it feels like the butterflies tilt theirs back, as if saying, "You understand now, right?" You nod, even if you don't fully. It's one of those dream logic moments where nodding feels like the correct response. And then the butterflies scatter again, disappearing into the trees like sparks into darkness, leaving you in the hush of the clearing. You stand there, heart slow and steady, with the uncanny sense that you've been handed a secret, one not written in ink, but in wings. Somewhere behind you, a twig snaps. The forest breathes differently. The sense of solitude shifts into the awareness of being watched. Perhaps the princess herself has followed, or perhaps the butterflies, mischievous as ever, are drawing more dreamers into their map. Either way, you know the clearing isn't finished with you yet. You don't have to wait long to find out who's watching. From the far edge of the clearing, a figure steps forward. Her gown drifts just above the grass, catching the moonlight in soft ripples, and her hair shines like polished bronze. It's the princess, the very one whose dreams you've been chasing like a sleep-deprived detective on a case that pays exclusively in butterflies. She doesn't speak at first. Instead, she extends her hand and a butterfly lands delicately on her finger, wings opening and closing with the calm rhythm of a heartbeat. You can feel her gaze, gentle, curious, but threaded with that quiet authority only fairy tale royalty seem to pull off. "You see them too," she says at last. Her voice is low, almost conspiratorial, like someone whispering secrets over cocoa. "Most people never notice." You nod. Words feel unnecessary here, partly because you're stunned, and partly because you're secretly worried you'll blurt something ridiculous, like asking her butterflies are unionized. She steps closer, and the butterflies seem to orbit her, as if they're the center of gravity. Some land on her shoulders, others in her hair, glowing faintly against the strands. It hits you then. This is what the village children described. She doesn't just share dreams, she embodies them, like a walking, breathing dreamscape. Historically speaking, dream figures like this weren't unusual in folklore. Medieval texts often described dream bringers, spirits or saints said to slip into bedrooms at night, scattering visions like confetti. Folklorists can't agree whether these were personifications of natural phenomena like moonlight or moral lessons dressed up in sparkle. Either way, meeting one in person feels oddly natural, like bumping into a celebrity you've only ever heard rumors about. The princess tilts her head toward you, studying your expression. Then she laughs softly. She says, "You think this is magic, but it's only a conversation. Dreams and butterflies, they're just how the world talks when people forget to listen." That line could easily be a motivational poster, but somehow, coming from her, it works. She gestures toward the glowing grass at the center of the clearing. The butterflies swirl again, forming fleeting shapes. A doorway, a crown, a winding road. Every night I dream, and they carry fragments away. Sometimes they bring them back as riddles, sometimes as warnings. But they are never from me alone. They belong to everyone. Quirky tidbit. In old Slavic folklore, it was said that when someone dreamed vividly, their soul temporarily left their body to roam. If you woke them suddenly, you risked trapping their soul outside. Scholars argue whether this was spiritual caution or just an elaborate excuse for letting people sleep in. Either way, watching the princess here, you half wonder if she's halfway between waking and dreaming all the time, if that's the price of her gift. The clearing feels charged, like every blade of grass is listening. You realize the princess hasn't just brought you here to witness. She's invited you to step into the conversation. And honestly, refusing at this point would be like declining an invitation to karaoke when your favorite song just queued up. You take a breath and move toward the center, ready to see what happens when dreams stop being private whispers and become shared stories under the open sky. The grass in the center of the clearing seems almost too perfect, soft, silvery, and suspiciously inviting, like the kind of spot where, in a fairy tale, you'd expect either enlightenment or a sudden nap ambush. You step onto it, and the ground hums faintly beneath your feet, a low vibration like the purr of a very large, very satisfied cat. The princess watches quietly, her butterflies circling in lazy spirals overhead. As you stand there, the butterflies begin to descend, not all at once, but slowly, carefully, as if they're arranging themselves into something more deliberate. First, they cluster at your feet, glowing brighter, until your shadow stretches long and strange across the clearing. Then they rise, weaving around your body in looping arcs. The air shimmers. The sensation is hard to describe, like being both tickled and blessed at the same time. One butterfly brushes your cheek, and suddenly you smell honeysuckle, even though there's none around. Another brushes your shoulder, and you hear faint laughter, though no one speaks. A third lands briefly on your hand, and your chest fills with a deep calm, the kind you only get when the Wi-Fi goes down and you remember books exist. The princess steps closer, speaking softly. They're showing you pieces of yourself, dreams you forgot, or ones that never found a place to land. That makes sense in the dream logic sort of way. Folklore has long suggested that butterflies symbolize souls or wandering thoughts. In ancient Greece, the word psyche meant both butterfly and soul. Scholars still bicker about whether butterflies in myths are literal insects or poetic shorthand for the mind's journey. Right now, though, it feels less like poetry and more like a strangely accurate therapy session hosted by winged insects. Then comes the quirky twist. One butterfly hovers directly in front of your face, its wings flickering in patterns that look suspiciously like Morse code. You can't help but laugh. Apparently, even in dreams, communication gaps exist. "I don't speak butterfly," you murmur, though part of you wonders if maybe you actually do. The princess laughs too, a soft ripple of sound that makes the whole clearing feel warmer. "They're showing you're welcome," she translates, though you're not entirely sure if she's teasing or deadly serious. Probably both. Around you, the swarm intensifies, glowing brighter, until the entire clearing looks like a lantern festival. Patterns emerge again, but this time they're not maps of places. You realize they're maps of possibilities. Paths branching out like rivers, doors opening into unknown rooms. It's overwhelming, but in that oddly soothing way that reminds you of scrolling endlessly through movie options and finding comfort in not having to choose. Folklorists might argue whether these visions are prophecy, metaphor, or just brain static. The debate has been going on for centuries, with no clear answer. But standing here, cocooned in butterflies, you realize it doesn't matter. What matters is that the princess is letting you see what she sees every night. The delicate, shimmering weight of choices, carried on wings. One path glows brighter than the rest, catching your eye. The princess notices and tilts her head knowingly. "Ah," she says, "so that's the one that calls you." You want to ask what it means, but the words fade before they reach your mouth. The butterflies have already decided your next step.
The butterflies swirl again, folding inward until that single glowing path stands out in sharper relief. It stretches like a ribbon of pale light, winding away from the clearing into the darker folds of the forest. You hesitate, because let's be honest, wandering down mysterious glowing paths in enchanted woods is usually how fairy tale characters end up with curses, questionable bargains, or suddenly becoming swans. The princess seems to sense your reluctance. She steps close enough that you can see the faint freckles dusted across her nose, the human details that make her less legend and more girl. "Don't worry," she says, with a smile that somehow manages to be both playful and reassuring. "This path doesn't eat travelers, at least not lately." Great. Comforting. Still, you feel the gentle nudge of the butterflies. One alights on your sleeve like a tour guide insisting you keep up. Another tugs at your hair in a way that's only mildly annoying, like a cat pawing at your attention. You sigh, because resisting butterflies is apparently impossible, and take your first step down the glowing ribbon of grass. The forest shifts around you as you walk. Shadows pull back just enough to let you pass, while the trees lean closer as though trying to eavesdrop. Somewhere above, an owl hoots, low, rhythmic, almost approving. It reminds you that in Greek myths,
Owls symbolized Athena's wisdom, though folklorists still debate whether that meant owls were considered brilliant companions or simply looked perpetually unimpressed. Either way, you're grateful this one seems more mentor than menace. As you continue, you notice something odd. The butterflies aren't just guiding you, they're carrying whispers. Every flutter seems to echo faint voices. A child laughing, a woman humming, a man reciting words you can't quite catch. It dawns on you that these aren't random noises. These are the dreams of others, collected and ferried by delicate wings. A quirky tidbit from Chinese folklore comes to mind. It was once believed that dreaming of a butterfly meant your soul had temporarily wandered into another world. Some scholars argue it's just metaphor. Others say it reflects a cultural fascination with transformation. But here, on this glowing path, it feels literal. You're walking through a corridor stitched from the loose threads of thousands of slumbering minds. You glance back once. The princess remains at the edge of the clearing, watching you with calm patience, as if she knows this journey isn't hers to take. She raises a hand in silent encouragement, and the glow around her makes her look like she belongs equally to both dream and daylight. The path bends, dips, and then suddenly opens into a small meadow, its grass taller and wilder than before. In the middle stands something unexpected, a stone archway, half crumbled, yet humming faintly with the same energy that thrummed beneath your feet earlier. Butterflies cling to its edges, their wings lighting up the carvings etched into the stone, symbols that look both ancient and oddly familiar. You step closer, tracing one with your finger. It sparks slightly, not enough to burn, but enough to remind you that fairy tale architecture does not come with a safety manual. The butterflies pulse brighter, urging you forward. Somewhere deep inside, you recognize this isn't just a path. It's a threshold. And in fairy tales, thresholds are where everything shifts, where the ordinary world politely excuses itself and the extraordinary one pulls up a chair. The archway hums louder as you stand before it, as though it's sizing you up. The butterflies cluster tighter along the stone, their glow illuminating fragments of moss and weathered carvings. You lean in, squinting at one spiraled symbol that looks suspiciously like a doodle someone might sketch while stuck in a boring meeting. Maybe it's ancient runic script. Maybe it's just the universal language of oops, wrong line. Scholars have argued for centuries about whether such markings in ruins are ritual codes, cosmic maps, or just decorative filler by stonemasons with too much free time. The debate is still ongoing, though tonight, in this dreamlike moment, the markings feel personal, like a half-forgotten note scribbled just for you. You hesitate, naturally. Walking through mysterious glowing portals rarely ends with, and then everything was chill forever. More often, it's, and then dragons, eternal sleep, or, at best, a tricky riddle about soup. But the butterflies keep tugging at you, their tiny wings brushing against your arms in encouragement. One even lands squarely on your nose, which feels less like divine guidance and more like being bullied into destiny by a glittery insect. The princess's voice drifts faintly from the meadow behind you. Not all doors are meant to trap. Some are meant to teach. She doesn't shout. It's more like her words are carried by the butterflies themselves, slipping directly into your ear with the gentleness of a lullaby sung by the universe itself. You place a hand on the archway. The stone is cool, but beneath it thrums that same purring vibration, steady as a heartbeat. You push forward. And just like that, you're through. The world beyond is quiet. Startlingly so. No chirping insects, no rustling leaves, no princess laughing softly at your overly cautious pacing, just Silence. Vast and smooth, stretching out in all directions. You glance down and realize you're no longer standing on grass, but on a surface that looks like polished obsidian, reflecting faint ripples of starlight. Above you, the sky glows with constellations you don't recognize, patterns of animals, ships, and spirals that no earthly astronomer has ever charted. It feels both infinite and intimate, as though you've stepped into the inside of someone's dream, which in a way you probably have. Folklorists often argue about whether dreamscapes in fairy tales are shared collective realms or personal projections. Some believe these spaces are archives of the human subconscious. Others shrug and suggest storytellers just really liked weird sky descriptions. A laugh bubbles up in you, half nervous, half awed. The butterflies scatter across the starry floor, leaving glowing footprints that don't quite fade. They arrange themselves in swirling spirals, then pause as if waiting for you to notice. It dawns on you, they're spelling something. Not letters exactly, but images. A crown. A set of keys. A butterfly itself. 3 symbols glowing softly in the cosmic dark. A crown for choice. Keys for doors. A butterfly for dreams. You stare at them, your mind fumbling between profound interpretation and the creeping suspicion that the butterflies have just invented charades. Either way, the meaning lands deep, not on your brain, but somewhere softer. Somewhere that listens even when logic doesn't. And just then, the silence breaks. A soft hum swells across the starlit expanse, low, gentle, like the opening note of a lullaby sung by the universe itself.
The hum gathers, deepening into a melody that feels less like sound and more like the inside of your own breathing. You let it wash over you, and suddenly the butterflies take flight again, sweeping upward into the star-patched sky. Their wings catch the light, scattering it into glittering streams that bend into patterns. Slowly, impossibly, those patterns form shapes you recognize, not from fairy tales, but from history. There's the outline of a pyramid, solid and immense, then a Viking ship with its proud curved prow, an amphora spinning delicately in midair like pottery that forgot about gravity. The butterflies are staging a history lesson, dream style. It's the sort of thing your old school teacher might have appreciated if only butterflies had been available for classroom presentations instead of squeaky chalkboards. Each figure lingers long enough for you to absorb it before dissolving back into dust. You realize what they're showing. Every culture, every time, has dreamt of butterflies. Ancient Chinese poets wrote that a dreaming man might be a butterfly instead of himself. Aztec legends claimed the spirits of warriors became butterflies after death. In medieval Europe, people whispered that butterflies carried children's laughter between villages. Historians argue endlessly about whether these are coincidences or some cross-cultural instinct. But tonight, watching the display, you feel the arguments fade. The connection is clear. Butterflies are bridges, always have been. You glance to your side, and the princess is suddenly there, her gown trailing starlight like she's grown accustomed to this realm. She doesn't speak right away, just watches with you. Then, softly, she says, "Do you see now? My dreams are not mine alone. They belong to everyone who ever believed wings could carry hope." You nod, though the lump in your throat suggests this nod means more than agreement. It's acceptance, recognition, maybe even gratitude. The butterflies begin a final pattern, slower and more deliberate than the rest. This time they form a single enormous butterfly, wings spread wide across the entire dream sky. Its body shimmers like a river of light,
Its antennae curl into question marks, as if it's daring you to wonder what comes next. The hum deepens once more, steady and hypnotic. It vibrates through your ribs, and you realize your eyelids are growing heavy, not with sleep exactly, but with a deeper kind of rest. The princess steps closer, her hand brushing yours, grounding you. "Not every journey ends with answers," she whispers, almost teasing. "Sometimes it ends with the right kind of silence." You let out a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. Around you, the starlit floor ripples like water, and you feel yourself sinking, not falling, but gently lowering, as though the dream itself has decided to tuck you in. The last thing you see before the darkness folds around you is the great butterfly, glowing and steady, a guardian, stitched from history, myth, and your own weary imagination.
Darkness wraps around you like the softest quilt, stitched together not with thread, but with the hush of distant stars. You don't fight it. You let yourself sink, as though this is the most natural way to move through the universe. The butterflies drift above you like lanterns set free on a midnight river. Their glow dimming, not in loss, but in gentleness, as if they know this part of the journey asks for less light. The princess's voice follows, though you don't see her anymore. "Dreams are never finished," she says, her words so faint they feel borrowed from your own thoughts. They pause, they fold, they wait until you open them again. For a moment, you hover between remembering and forgetting. The meadow, the forest, the doorway, and the stars, they blur like chalk washed clean in the rain. You're not sad, though. It feels right, like stories are meant to slip away so they can return fresher the next time you wander into them. Some folklorists claim that fairy tales endure because they carry secrets too deep for one telling. Others argue it's just human stubbornness, the way we cling to any excuse for gathering around firelight. You smile at the thought, a sleepy curve of your lips, because tonight you've seen enough to know both might be true. Your body feels weightless, then heavier, then weightless again, as though you were both drifting on water and sinking into a mattress. Every heartbeat slows to a careful hush. The last flutter of wings brushes past your cheek, and you imagine it's the final butterfly bowing out of the performance. And then there's nothing but quiet. Now the story fades, like a lantern carried deeper into the night. The meadow, the forest, the butterflies, and the princess, everything grows softer, dimmer, more distant, as though tucked carefully into the corners of your mind where dreams like to wait. You let your breathing fall into rhythm with the silence, steady and easy, like a tide that no longer needs to rush. The air feels cooler now, softer against your skin, and the weight of your body against the bed reminds you that you are safe, grounded, and ready to rest. There is nothing more to chase, nothing more to solve, nothing more to hold. The butterflies have flown on, the door has closed, the stars have dimmed, and you are exactly where you need to be. Every muscle in you loosens. Shoulders release their grip, jaw untangles, hands rest open and easy. Even your thoughts seem to yawn and stretch before curling up into quiet corners, leaving only the simplest awareness behind that you are here, breathing, drifting, letting go. If the story lingers,
Let it hum in the background of your dreams like a familiar tune, soothing and steady. If it fades, let it fade completely, because sometimes rest is found in forgetting, in clearing space for something new to arrive later. Tonight there is no demand, no deadline, no urgency, only stillness, and the comfort of knowing that the world can wait until morning. So let your eyes grow heavier. Let the quiet settle deeper. Let yourself drift into the softest sleep, with wings of memory carrying you gently forward. Good night, dreamer. Sleep well, and sweet dreams, sweet dreams, sweet dreams, sweet dreams.